Hey everyone, and welcome to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and I'm joined, as always, by Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is our science fiction movie podcast. Every time we get together, we're here to talk about a sci-fi movie, and this is another 70s sci-fi movie where we're firing through some of these in advance and going to do some sort of special occasion with them. We don't know what yet exactly, but we've got plans. This is going to be The Terminal Man from 1974. We'll start spoiler-free, of course.
You want to try that again? The Terminal Man?
I thought you were going to be like, I didn't watch that movie, I watched this movie. I was like, oh shit, did we watch different movies? Do we have to go and watch the other ones and then come back and record both?
How do you not say it like Arnold? Terminal.
Terminal Man. I can't, because I can't do Arnold voice.
Oh, that's a shame.
I can't do Arnold voice, so that's why I can't. I can give you John Hammond, but I can't do Arnold.
You've got one impression. The only Scotsman who has any quotable lines.
I'm sure there's other ones. I mean, I can do...
I ate the baby.
That sounded a lot more like your Arnold voice than it did anything else.
Terminal Man ate the baby.
Oh, I ate a baby. That's what you're going for. I can't believe you just made me do a fat bastard line. I hate you now. I hate that character with a passion.
Off to a good start.
Mm-hmm. So yes, The Terminal Man, 1974. We'll start spoiler free. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers. This is a film about a gentleman played by George Segal. This is a character's named Harry Benson, and he was in an accident. He was in a motor vehicle accident, and he got brain damage from it, and he has this condition. His wife and daughter died in the accident, and he has this condition where he blacks out, and in those blackouts he has no memory of what he does in these blackouts, but he becomes very violent, very psychotic, you might say. And he opts into this procedure to put a computer chip into his brain, which will hopefully kind of like null those impulses, so that when he has a blackout, it'll actually control them and stop him from doing anything violent. He wants to feel safe, so he won't attack anyone. And the film's basically this procedure and the fallout from it, and that is the gist of it. So, Tara, what did you think of The Terminal Man?
I think it's okay. It's a bit boring. Freaking cat. I think it's a bit boring, but I think the ideas are there, and I think it's oddly it's boring, but it also has a lot of scenes that are quite beautiful. It's well shot, but it's well directed, but I kind of agree with the boring thing. There's definitely a lot of time spent on things that don't need that much time, and a lot of the interesting ideas feel like they're underexplored. So I guess my overall opinion in this would be it's kind of a missed opportunity, but it's not necessarily one without some merits. Agreed. Yeah, there's a lot there. I think it can definitely be, remade, and like you said, there's potential. It sets up a lot of ideas that it doesn't really follow through on. Did you kind of think this movie was going to be about mind control? Because did they set that up and then not deliver on that also?
They kind of teased that. They also, the whole idea, the character has a phobia of machines and computers. He thinks computers are dangerous and they're going to take over. And he's getting a computer chip put in his brain to help him. And I feel like that...
And he has a lot of knowledge of computers.
I feel like all of that amounted to nothing. All of it.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing really comes from the fact that, because all that really happens, and I mean we're still in spoiler free, but it's not like the computer takes over him or anything like that. It's not like that at all. It just makes his condition worse. I mean, I guess that's a mild spoiler, but that's all that really happens. There's no idea of the computer chip really affecting anything other than that. There's no ideas of him being more paranoid because there's a computer chip inside him.
Right.
There's nothing. There's nothing with any of these ideas, to the point where on paper this sounded really science fiction-y. The actual movie is very slight science fiction, very slight.
Very slight. Yeah, it's more I was thinking there's a lot of parallels to just pharmaceutical industries trying to, instead of going to the root of a problem, trying to cover up symptoms, and the consequences of those. You can't take Tylenol without reading a warning about liver damage or aspirin without like kidney damage. Like there is a cost to everything. There's no such thing as a free lunch in nature. And this is the same kind of idea where it's just let's just see what we can do without really like fixing the cause of a problem. And those repercussions, that fine print that's unexplored so far, like they're just, it's also kind of the same message as Jurassic Park. Like, can we do this? Not should we do it?
Well,
which I mean it's the same author.
Yeah.
So,
which oddly,
I don't know if we mentioned it.
Yeah, it's Michael Crichton. But what's funny about it is that the movie starts with, now I actually looked the actor up because the actor's not Scottish, but there's one of the doctors at the start who's explaining like to the other doctors, because the opening scene of the movie is like just at a dinner table, and it's like these three guys. It's a really weird scene actually for a couple of reasons. But the guy who's
Paul Newman scene.
Yeah, the guy who's explaining like what they're going to do, he's very much the John Hammond, and he's the one with the crazy idea, and he's like, so here's what we're going to do. And he's got a bit of a Scottish accent, which he's putting on because the actor's not Scottish. I looked him up, and I thought it was really weird.
How dare he? There are plenty of Scottish actors who need work.
Exactly. How dare he? Yeah, and screw Mike Myers while I'm on the topic. But like, I thought it was really funny how both this and Jurassic Park start off with the scene with some Scottish guy, some crazy Scottish guy who's eccentric, going, "Hey, I've got this idea. You're never going to believe this. Spared no expense. I don't care for lawyers. Do you? Like. It was such a weird part because Westworld, which we've not done on the show yet, but we've both seen the Westworld movie.
No, but I have watched it also. Like, it's part of this like 70s science fiction watch I'm doing.
It's basically the same plot as Jurassic Park, but with these robots instead of dinosaurs, right? It's the exact same thing.
I guess a lot of Michael Crichton has. Well, I guess he has a formula.
Is it pronounced Crichton? Because it doesn't look like it's pronounced that way.
Yeah, I think it's Crichton.
Is it Crichton? Okay. I always said Crichton. I said Crichton earlier because I thought, I'm going to sound smart and try and say it right. But if it's Crichton, it's Crichton. Maybe
like originally his family name was that, but I'm pretty sure it's Crichton now.
Fair enough. We'll go with it. We'll roll with it. Yeah, this opening scene was weird to me because there's a point because he's explaining the condition. He's explaining how people, there's like 4 million Americans right now who have this condition where they black out and they'll do different things based on their accidents. And what it's done to their brain. And then the example he gives is like, I once met a woman who would have intercourse with as many as 12 men and not be satisfied. And there's this long pause, and this guy with a bow tie and glasses goes, "My God." I just started laughing.
Those men are terrible at sex.
It really made me laugh.
Who am I?
And as it's this sort of posh guy with a bow tie, and he's like, "My God, 12 men couldn't satisfy a woman? Great Scott, man. We must find a cure for this immediately." It just really made me laugh. But
it's so bizarre. And that's after he goes, "Is that Paul Newman over there?" No, nothing.
Yeah, I feel like there's a pacing to some movies in the 70s that's so lackadaisical. It's like the complete opposite of what like I think some movies are now, which are too fast and too sped up. There's a middle ground.
That.
Yeah, like because this is the thing. The movie essentially, after this little prologue scene explaining some stuff, really starts with the arrival of Harry Benson at this facility, this hospital, and he comes in and they put him in his room, and it's this really long drawn out thing of all these steps. And I get why it's doing all these steps. It's building the suspense of what the thing is, but
we're trying to figure out who he is, and he gives these little clues and stuff.
So here's a question I want to pose. The movie made a choice, right? Or the director and writer made a choice here, where they didn't show him in one of his violent outbursts to start the movie. Because my instinct here would be to show one of it, because they mentioned that he's had a couple of these outbursts and he's tried to murder at least two people.
They've shown pictures of like what happens to people when they're around him. Like you mentioned his wife and child died in the car crash, but I thought it was his wife in the photos.
So, you may be right. Yeah, you may be right.
Maybe that was just his girlfriend or something, but but yeah, we see like him with all these pictures of him as a happy family, and then all of a sudden we see him like in prison.
I'll be honest, we watched this like 5 days ago. That detail might have swapped around in my head. It might be that his wife and daughter have left him to be safe, rather. But the rest of the movie didn't give me the impression.
There was a car crash.
Yeah, but the rest of the movie didn't give me the impression that he was trying to get back with his wife and kid, because you never hear about them or see them again. So I assumed they'd passed away from memory. But
yeah,
but
Anita, there is a character that we meet that is clearly like his girlfriend or something.
Yeah. But you know, they made this choice not to show him actually do something, and I thought that was kind of interesting, because as the movie's going on and they show the other characters around him kind of treat him like with sort of distance, as if they're kind of scared of him, but he's kind of friendly. You know, he's actually quite friendly and nice most of the time, but it's just the idea that he could have one of these blackouts. You know, he smells something, he has a blackout, and he becomes this violent kind of monster, but we never see it, and I thought it was kind of weird that. Because
I thought it was interesting that when we see him, when we get introduced to him, he gets like he's handcuffed and he gets removed from the back of a truck, like like he clearly came from an institution of some type, and he's in a suit, like he looks like he just got home from work. No, and I thought that was an interesting way to present him too.
But here's my weird thing with this. I actually don't mind. I didn't mind it in the first half that they didn't show us it, because I thought, they're building up, they're letting us think about it and suspect what he's actually like, so that when he eventually does, because we're going to see it at some point, of course.
Yeah, everyone's telling us he's dangerous, and so he looks unassuming. He doesn't look dangerous at all. But the problem I have with this though is that when things start going wrong and he starts, because the whole idea is that it's getting worse and happening more, because from what we hear early on in the movie, it's something that happens once in a while. It's not every day. It's something that happens. It's randomized.
Yeah, it's very random and long and drawn out in various.
There's nothing that seems to trigger it. It just kind of happens. But
it's fairly spaced out, right? But once things go wrong, it starts happening quicker. I thought it was really strange that it was hard to get a sense once that started happening, like how much of a bigger problem this was, because we didn't have any real context for what it was like before, in terms of actually seeing it, right? So when we see it later on in the movie, I actually felt like, because we don't see it until it's getting worse, I really thought the movie would have benefited either from starting with the aftermath, like directly seeing what's happened from one of his outbursts, or like in the middle of the first half, like before he has the procedure, like seeing one that almost happens, like see him like have his blackout, but he's in restraints, right? So we get the tease of like, he's getting like violent and angry, but we don't actually get to see him do the thing. You
don't think that showing him have an outburst and attack somebody right away will make us not want to root for him?
No, you're right. There's a cost to that choice, right? There's like two different like methods here, which is why I'm offering you the third option. I'm saying give us a lot of what we get at the start, then have him have an outburst when he's restrained, so he can't actually do anything, but we see what he becomes. Yeah, he seems it's like a Jekyll and Hyde, we're supposed to assume. But the only person we see is him before he. Like, we never see him have an outburst until later on. And every time he interacts with people, it's kind of friendly and funny. Like, he's really funny in the beginning. But there's a point, I think, where it's too long that's happening, where I think the movie's robbed of the suspense that it could otherwise have of being scared. Yeah. Like, I think making us like him first is a good idea. So I will happily say that, probably showing something right at the start of the movie is not a good idea, even though I think it's also a valid choice, but it does create a different tone from the start. But let's say you don't want that. Let's say you want to make us like him first. That's cool. But I think it really needed us to see the danger of him somewhere in the first half, when we still got to like him afterwards. Because the problem is that once he starts going really bad because things are going wrong because of the procedure, it's kind of just a lost cause at that point. And there's not really, like, I think the human drama of it's lost, where I think if we saw him have an outburst and then saw him be likable again afterwards, and saw him really be scared that it happened again, and see, like, it would be like a 1-2 punch, because on the one hand we'd see the danger of what he's like when he does do this, but on the other hand, seeing him be really remorseful and scared about it afterwards would actually make us sympathize with him even more, I think. So I think the movie really misses a beat by not having something like that. The first time we see him have an outburst is already when things are worse than they ever were before, but we never got to see what they were like before. Not really. We had it implied, which was fine up until a point, but we really needed to see something. So that would be my main big complaint of the movie. The other big complaint of the movie is that and I can kind of attribute this to one section, to one scene, although it's a problem in all scenes as well, but definitely this one is the biggest offender. The actual operation when he goes under the knife, I checked because I was curious afterwards. This sequence starts around the 22-minute mark and doesn't end until the 41-minute mark.
It is unbelievably long.
And it's not exciting.
And it's not. There's no tension, and it's just so drawn out. And it doesn't need to be. Like, it's not a particularly long movie, I don't think. Well, maybe it's like an hour and 40 or something, but...
They could have easily, out of this, like, what did I just say? 19 minutes. They could have cut 15 of these 19 minutes out, and you would have lost nothing of value. Nothing.
Like, we even, like, hear the surgeon, like, the head surgeon guy that we see in the beginning, like, he's talking through the procedure, and he's just, like... chit-chatting with his nurses and
all the doctors.
They're not even like, they're not talking about anything important. He's just like, when I was I don't know, when I was doing my training or whatever, this surgeon used to make jokes the whole time or whatever. Like, okay.
I think the problem is that the movie's so dry, and like, so the characters are so like one note other than Harry himself, and with maybe Dr. Ross, because she's like kind of more prominent in the second half. But the problem is, see, I could almost buy that this would work. See, if they'd built up that this was a difficult procedure and they weren't sure if it was going to be a success, and we'd gotten to know the doctor performing it and knew that he was nervous, then maybe him being nervous throughout and trying to make small talk to make himself feel better, and seeing that he's scared as he's doing it, that could maybe be entertaining. That could maybe be suspenseful.
I think the scene is well shot. Like, it looks really good, but it is just too boring. And I think it's good for, like, if you're a medical student, you'd probably really dig it. Because, like, it's so accurate. But
but we don't know.
The rest of us are just like, I don't want to watch the Surgery Channel right now. I want to watch.
Here's the thing, Tara. Here's the thing, Tara. Though we don't know if it's accurate. I mean, you're assuming it is because it's so long, drawn out, and boring.
Michael Crichton does have a background in medical science,
but
so that's why I'm assuming it. He puts a lot of science in his books that are like pretty. As far as I know.
Okay, that's fair. But you are still assuming. You don't actually know for sure if all this babble is accurate.
It's true. I just don't know why else they would include it, because it doesn't mean anything.
Sure, okay, that's a fair point. Yeah, why would they include it if they're not like, we're proud of how accurate all this stuff sounds? Here's the thing: this scene, after the first couple of minutes of them starting the procedure, you could literally just cut to the ending of it and say, okay, that's us done, and that would be fine.
Yeah, they try to have some tension where he's like, oh, he's about to hit a blood vessel. This could be dangerous, and there's like this beeping sound that becomes steady all of a sudden, like, oh, some tension, and then they just go around the blood vessel and it's over real fast. So I mean, whatever.
Yeah, it's such a dull sequence. It is unreal. This is absolutely something that if you know, I think there's potential in this. It needs to be remade, and they have to decide what they want to focus on beyond like what this movie does, because this movie doesn't focus on any of the interesting ideas. It doesn't focus on any of the things that make it interesting or science fiction or anything like that. It's just like, it makes his condition worse. That's it, and the tragedy that comes from that, which we'll get to in spoilers. But like, that's basically it. We should probably talk about some of the other characters though. We mentioned Dr. Ross, who's kind of not a love interest, although there's like a male attraction.
Yeah, I mean, she's a very attractive woman, and he kind of brings that up at one point, but it seems to be a professional relationship for the most part. But she's not, I don't know what it is about her really, but I don't really find myself afraid for her. And I think maybe that's just the directing. Mm-hmm. Like, they want me to care about her, and I think it's just the length of the scenes that, like, the tension goes away, and maybe my concern for the character does too.
I think it's the writing, to be honest, because I don't think we get enough of her to actually really care about her. Like, you know, she I feel like after one brief introduction, we don't really see her until she's interviewing him after he has the procedure, and then from there, like, it's kind of just into the last act of the movie. And like,
I think the problem is another just drawn out scene, and that's the scene, we'll talk about it in spoilers, but there's like a chase scene, or they're trying to figure out what happened and where somebody went.
Yeah.
And it's just so drawn out.
Which would be, I mean, that's the sort of thing you could draw out if it was suspenseful, if it was actually engaging because you were kind of concerned about it. But the movie doesn't really give you any reason to find it suspenseful. My thing with this is that the characters are all so bland. Like I didn't learn a single name in this movie outside of Harry Benson. Like none of them like struck a chord in any way, form. Like she's just
Dr. Rogers. Is he the one with the forehead? Dr. Morris.
Morris, there you go. Forehead man, yes. I would describe him as a smug Walton Goggins.
Yeah, he's sort of early Walton Goggins. If Walton Goggins and Jeffrey Combs merged together, yes. Maybe a hint of Willem Dafoe.
And he has such a...
Which sounds really interesting, but actually he's just okay.
Yeah, all of his stuff kind of goes nowhere as well, actually.
Minus like 60% charisma.
Yes. All of his stuff goes nowhere. Like, there's a scene where he kind of flirts with Harry's girlfriend because he meets her at one point. There's a scene where he goes to like a strip club briefly for seemingly no reason.
Mm-hmm. He seems to be set up as the doctor who's willing to do anything to like get this experiment done, and even if it can be malicious, like he doesn't really seem to care too much about like the welfare of the person involved. Mm-hmm. And but like not a whole lot comes out of that for him. Like there's no retribution scene for him or anything.
He doesn't really have like an ending either. He just kind of disappears at some point.
Yeah,
and
there's no arc or ending or anything for him.
Yeah, it's kind of strange in that sense.
Out until we like I meant to just forget that he exists, although he was set up as a main character.
Yeah, I'm actually just clicking on. I want to see if he's been in anything else that I may have seen.
He's got quite a face. He's got a good face.
Yeah, he was in Knowing, that Nicolas Cage movie from 2009. Of all things. Although bizarrely before that he wasn't in anything for like most of the 2000s. Like you have to go back to the 90s to get more stuff with him.
Huh.
That's interesting. He was in Cherry 2000, which I've never seen but I've heard of.
You've heard of that?
I've heard of Cherry 2000, believe it or not.
Don't know what that is.
He was in an episode of MacGyver.
He's got a great face, and he seems to be a fine actor in the movie, but he's I don't know. He just looks like people. He doesn't look like someone who I know.
It's an episode of Dallas.
Exciting.
Yeah, he's done a lot of like one-off TV appearances. He's not really got
Probably
much.
played a villain.
Yeah.
He seems wormy.
Yeah, he's not really been in a whole lot of stuff of note. Yeah.
He's the pre-Goggins, you know.
He's the pre-Goggins. No, as soon as I saw him, I got this Walton Goggins vibe off of him. If Walton Goggins let his hair grow out, so he had this more of like a bigger, puffy wall of hair. He's still got the big forehead going back, but let it go out.
I can see it.
He's almost like Lando in Babylon 5.
That's all.
Oh sure, yeah. But he's almost like Lando in Babylon 5 with the way the hair is. If he gelled it up, he would have that wall of hair.
I know that reference.
Okay, so spoilers. Where do I want to begin? Alright, so let's talk about the fact that after the procedure, well, there's other scenes I want to talk about before that, but I want to talk about after the procedure. Well, they set up, this is what you were talking about, I think, with the mind control stuff, where there were no, I don't even know exactly what they were doing. They were sending like various waves to the computer chip in his head, and it was giving him different like emotions and feelings. And they tried one, and it was
smells and stuff.
Yeah, it was smelling like beef or something like that at one point. And then they sent like another, because we're just going to look at numbers. Like, okay, we'll send them L692, and one of them he immediately goes, "Oh, you're very attractive, doctor," and he starts like brushing her like face.
That's the horny one. That's the horny one.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we've clearly made him aroused. Oh,
they're all excited by it too.
Yeah, they're all really excited by it.
Yeah, maybe this will work for that woman. We've discovered a cure.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Or maybe they're just thinking, can we somehow make an excuse to put this into like every woman on the planet and just send it?
We'll just disguise it as birth control.
Yes, just send it out as the horny signal. Just have it be this like little unknown, this little secret fact that every night.
Why else do men invent anything?
They have this thing where they're basically reading these brainwaves and they're like, oh shit, like this is building up to an episode, and the computer chip is actually going to increase the frequency of these episodes where he blacks out and does something violent. And unfortunately for them, he sneaks out. His girlfriend brought him a bag, which, you know, the doctor passed on for him, but it had a wig in it, and he puts on the wig because he had to shave his head for the procedure. And he's outside with the wig, and he sneaks away. So everyone back at the hospital is freaking out and panicking and like, oh, we have to find him, we don't know where he is. And he's with his girlfriend in like either her apartment or a hotel room. I think it's her apartment. It's a very swish apartment. She does well for herself.
She's super modern.
Yeah. And this is kind of where I think the tension is really supposed to be. And I felt a little bit of it. I felt a little bit of like, okay, he's going to snap and like kill her at any point. Like this is something that's going to happen.
Yeah, she seemed like she was in danger for a little while. And then it just kind of went on for a while.
Yeah, it went on for a while, and there is eventually this murder scene where he stabs her on the waterbed, and it's kind of, you know, it's got its moments. It's well shot, the moment itself, which is good. Makes some good use of some extreme close-ups, and
he murders a waterbed.
He murders a waterbed. So you have all the blood flowing into the water, and it's, you know, it's got a visual spectacle.
It's going through like it's like mixing with the water, and it's going through the tiles and into the grout, so the grout's turning red, and you're like. It's quite pretty, actually. It's a really well, like, shot film. There are times where I thought this is very like, like they're going for Kubrick or something.
I almost wondered if the blood in the tiles where it was going in the grout, so it was making like a grid. I almost wondered if they were going for like a computer chip kind of looked with that, like the blood was making like like a computer grid kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm reaching there, but like I don't know. They really emphasized it, so. It could have just been pretty, but
it could have been. Yeah, I think the movie was going for something a little more high art,
which I think is his mistake. Honestly, like I feel like because it doesn't use its sci-fi, because all it is that he's going to snap and don't get me wrong, there is a suspenseful idea in there that could have been used to great effect where they're trying to find him and he's with people.
Yeah, I don't need him to turn into like. I don't know, a cyborg or
oh sure,
something
yeah,
where he's being controlled by AI or whatever. But, although they kind of teased it in the beginning. Like I was really thinking that this was going to be full sci-fi, half man, half machine.
But you happy they did nothing with it.
I mean, I know they're trying to be really, really grounded, like to the point where it doesn't seem like a science fiction film anymore. But. No,
it sounds like it's going to be sci-fi when they're explaining all this stuff, and then it's kind of dull and like I say,
it's also going for a horror film, but it kind of fails on the horror side.
Like I can see the potential in the idea of us waiting around, like him. We know that he's going to snap again every time. You know, maybe he keeps being around people, so that there's people that are always around him that are going to be in danger, and they're looking for him. And maybe the last time, you know, where they really like the big final moment could be like, oh, he's near a bunch of kids, so it's the most like, you know, dangerous yet. You know, where the people who are in danger are more vulnerable, and it could escalate like that. So there's a good thriller in there, like potentially. Mm-hmm. I don't think it does enough with it though to really make it that exciting either. Like, because as much as it's well shot, there's not enough examples. The whole ticking time clock element isn't utilized well enough to really make you feel the suspense of it. So it's kind of dull. And like I say though, it whiffs on the promise of the movie because it doesn't like it teases all these things of like them sending things to him, because what I thought was going to happen is they were going to try and calm him down by sending him one of those like signals, you know, to like, oh, let's try and calm him down with like this one because we know that makes him,
let's make him horny.
Yeah, let's make him horny. I don't know, that may turn out badly. You know, or maybe they would use
make him smell a ham sandwich.
You know, they'll do something else they'll use something they've discovered throughout the film to their benefit. They will utilize the tech they've put in them, but they didn't even do that. Never mind, not use the tech to either do something a bit more science fiction, where at the very least maybe they could play on the idea that he's scared of it, so that he actually goes more crazy because he's obsessed with the idea that the computer in his brain is taken over, but it's not really, it's all in his head. Right?
I mean, they set it up that he's a man who's brilliant at computers. That's what he did for a living. And that he also feared computers because of their potential and the power that they can have over humanity.
But exactly any one of these things.
They don't deliver on any of that.
Yeah,
so it's
any one of these things I've suggested would be taking what they set up and using one of them to actually build the back half of the movie out of it. But instead,
or even if he like brings it up at least a bit later, like this is what, like I understand computers. Like he even has a scene where he is being wheeled through in a wheelchair, and he notices a computer terminal. And he says, "Oh, that's a GX 7500 or whatever." I don't remember what he calls it. And they're like, "Yep, that's exactly what that is." He's like, "I know the model. I know everything about that computer or whatever." It's like, okay, so he understands to the point where maybe he can try to help save himself because he understands how computers work or whatever. But no, it's just, or explain more of the dangers about what he's going through.
The only scene that we have in the back half is that he goes to his place of work and smashes up some of the computers. Like, that is all that happens in terms
it's kind of funny.
Yeah, like there's nothing to it. Like it's such a disappointing film in the sense that it has all these things that it could play with, and it plays with absolutely none of them. And it doesn't even do enough in the suspense category to make just the suspense. Because I think on suspense alone, you could make what it does in the back half work. But I feel like in that movie, in the movie in my head, where that's what the movie is, right? That's all they want, is the idea that they have. Because all it really gives them, the technology in this film, all it does really in the movie is that it gives them a guaranteed countdown timer to when he's going to have an episode. And if that's all they wanted to build a movie around, then the actual tech that gives them that shouldn't be take up the build up of the entire first half of the movie. That should be a 5-10 minute section of the film that gives them that, and then the rest of it should be the build up to the first episode, and then the quicker build up to the second episode. Then someone realizes what's happening and they realize they can track it, and then it becomes this race against the clock to stop this killer. And it wouldn't really be a sci-fi movie, but like that's if they're going to focus it purely on that, which is what the movie in the back half tries to do. You have to make that be the most of the movie, not just. But the entire first half is all this build up of the tech and the procedure and the science fiction side of it, and then none of it really matters beyond just, oh, we know that he's going to have an episode. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's still the same message as far as I can tell as what they set up in the beginning with, like, apparently it's the way the chip is messed up is that human or the doctors did not account for the fact that when he has an episode and he goes into a seizure, the computer chip is supposed to give him like something to calm him down, and I assume it's like a dopamine hit or something, but it causes him to the signals from his brain are like, oh, we like this, so we're going to keep inducing the seizure for a long period of time, which makes him like 30 times more dangerous than he ever was before, and they can't control it. So, I mean, I think that the premise and the that initial theme is good enough to make a movie about, but it's just so I don't know, it just kind of whiffs on the delivery of just all the themes and the character arcs and
the sad part,
tension, and I don't know.
The sad part is that it's not that it should be any shorter or longer. The length is actually fine. The problem is that it spends so much of the length on not just obviously the operation scene we mentioned, but there's so many scenes where there's characters just
unnecessary
sitting watching, or they're just standing there in silence, and it doesn't really do much to actually propel the story forward. It's so lackadaisical in its approach. There's the big scene towards the end is that he actually goes by, the doctor that he's kind of befriended, Dr. Ross. Like he goes by
psychologist.
He goes by her home, and she realizes he's there, and it's supposed to be tense because she knows that he's on this clock, right? And she tries to phone for help, but the problem is that once it starts getting crazy and he's chasing her around and she's trying to fight off for herself, it ends up just being a bit of a cliche, and like even and I can't even say copying the movie because it didn't exist yet, but there's like a total Shining moment, and this movie came out before The Shining, so they didn't copy it, but there's a face in the bathroom door moment, and it's kind of like, oh, this is
a little bit.
This is weird that this came before The Shining, and again, it's not its fault because The Shining didn't exist yet.
I mean, there's a little bit that he goes to her place to talk to her. Presumably he doesn't know exactly, like he doesn't know the schedule that he's going to have this episode. Like maybe he's going there to punish her for being one of the doctors who did this to him. It's like, well, you have to deal with the consequence then, which means being afraid and being tortured by my presence here. But he allows her to stab him. So there's also like regret. I'm a little confused about why he's there exactly. Like, because she pulls a knife and he just walks into it.
He does. It's kind of a silly scene, actually, the way he walks into it. The bizarre thing, I mean, I guess you could read that as like the real him's kind of trying to fight back, and he wants to just kind of like end it because
he seems to be the real him at the moment. Like he doesn't.
Well, yeah, but that's the problem.
He doesn't want before an episode hits.
This is the thing, though. I don't think he does feel like the real him. I think at this point in the movie, he's intentionally. He's not like full on berserk mode, but he feels kind of like suspicious from the second he walks in the door. It's kind of like they want you to be like worried that he's already, snapped. Kind of thing. So they intentionally have him feel kind of creepy and feel kind of like, oh, he might already be there to attack her. And the problem with that is the rest of the movie's told us that he's completely fine when he's not having a blackout. So that scene...
That's what I thought. Like, I thought he was there initially to be like... He says that he learned the names and address and of all the doctors doing the procedure who are a part of this experiment. And I thought he was there to be like, now you have to, like, you're the reason I exist and I'm like released upon the public or whatever, that I've become a monster. So now you have to be a victim because of that. Like,
but the scene gave me the impression, though, that he had basically kind of like become unhinged by default. Like going through more of these episodes have made him kind of crazy anyway. That was the impression this scene where he goes to her place gave me, because he felt kind of, unhinged the entire time. And sure, he's still kind of him, which is why he like threw himself on the knife, because deep down he doesn't want to be, but he felt unstable to me like during the entire scene, which felt like it kind of murkied the whole movie. Because again, another concept for this movie could be that once he realizes that he's having these blackouts constantly, is one, he could just try and kill himself, or two, he could try and make a point of being isolated and try to be away from anyone so that he doesn't harm anyone. And that could be like a thing that part of the movie could be, is him trying to like stay away from people.
Well, he sort of does both of those things by the end. He stabs himself by hugging her when she's holding a knife, and then he throws himself into an open grave.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. It's just kind of unfulfilling, though, because instead of it being like he's trying to combat it and it keeps being a source of tension, it ends up just kind of being the ending, and it feels like the idea's not went far enough. It feels like which is kind of my problem with the whole movie, is that the ideas don't feel capitalized on. It feels like it doesn't feel like he's out there and dangerous enough for long enough.
Yeah. And I think George Segal is a fine actor, and it's a good performance. Like, I really like the first half of his performance in the beginning. I think he does some jokes that I think are really funny. Like, his character seems likable, but like by the end, there's some confusing. I don't think he's given enough direction on what his character's motivation is, because it doesn't really come through.
Yeah, well, I think that's my problem with the scene when he goes to see her. When he goes to her house, I think I don't get exactly, and to me it comes off because of the confusion is like he's kind of unhinged now in general, and I think the entire back half of the movie just feels undercooked. And the first half of the movie has its problems, but I think the problem is that it's too lackadaisical. And that would be fine.
The surgery scene's way too long.
Yeah, but that would be fine to a point, though, if we got like a full hour in the back half, or it'd be more than half of it at that point. But if we got like a full hour afterwards where they really spent their time building up the danger, building up the threat, and building up him trying to fight it and then realizing he couldn't, and make it this tragic sort of like story of like sacrifice where he has to sacrifice himself because he doesn't want to be that anymore. And you could say something really like kind of like bittersweet, there could be a message in there about not giving up, where someone, maybe it's Dr. Ross who says, no, you can't give up, you can't just give up and kill yourself, because that's kind of the bad message, right? You don't want to give people that message. That's not the message you should be sending out there about mental health. But you could do the opposite. So have this thing where she tries to bring him back from the brink and tries to sort of convince him that they can help him, that there's still hope for him, and maybe have this tragic ending where he just doesn't believe it and gives up anyway. Like there could be something there. There could be like some sort of meaningful story by the end of it.
I think there's also a bit of a message that's a little anti-doctor, and maybe that's not right exactly, but I know Michael Crichton went to medical school. I don't think he ever finished, but he writes a lot about this, and I think it's a bit about the hubris of doctors and how
let's rewind
see
then.
themselves.
Let's rewind to that scene towards the start where they have all the doctors there. They've got a big conference room, and they're explaining the procedure. They even have Harry come in on his wheelchair.
Going back to Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Who's Henry in Jurassic Park?
Henry Wu. Henry.
Yeah. Henry, yes. Yes. There are no animatronics here. These are all the real thing.
They're all autoerotica.
That's such a weird line in that movie. So there's this one old doctor who stands up and kind of yells and says this is inhumane and this is against like medicine and blah blah blah, and he compares it to the 50s or the 40s and 50s where lobotomies were performed, because that was seen how you dealt with any of these types of patients, and this was just kind of a new version of that. And he brings up a really good interesting point, which I don't know for sure was true, but it sounds believable, where he says that wasn't stopped because regulations were put in because it was seen as inhumane or because it was seen as barbaric. It only gets stopped because they realised they could make more money off of the pharmaceuticals to keep them drugged up instead. And that's why it's the way it is now. It's not because it's better. I mean, it's better in the sense that, okay, it's not completely destroying their brain forever, necessarily. They can maybe come back from these drugs, but it's, it's not because that's not why it's in place. It's in place because they found a way to make money off of it. And he says that this is just a new version of a lobotomy. My only critique of this old man yelling is that at the very least, Harry has willingly opted into this. He says he's given his consent. He wants to try this. So I will say that counts for something.
It's true, but it's like when you go to a doctor, you trust that they're an expert. But like when people who go to the doctor all the time and get second opinions, the doctors can be wrong and misdiagnose people all the time.
Oh, true.
So I think there's a little bit of like, you are not better or holier than thou because you are a doctor, which a lot of people put their faith into. And you have to remember that these are real people that you're dealing with lives and not just experiments. And I think that's written into all the doctors that we see, with the exception of maybe Dr. Ross.
And here's the thing.
Also, he definitely hates cops.
Here's the thing. If we got
all the cops look like idiots.
Oh yeah, they're all idiots in this movie. You're right. But here's the thing. If this movie ended with any of the doctors, because there's like 3 doctors involved, right? There's Walton Goggins Light, there's the kind of Scottish dude, and then there's the other one with the glasses. Yeah. Right. If any of those characters had arcs where at the end they realised that their own hubris, because in Jurassic Park, right, to compare John Hammond to them, because he's kind of the parable here, right? John Hammond has an arc where by the end of Jurassic Park, he agrees and realizes that this park, it's not a big arc, it's not that complicated, but all it is
shouldn't exist.
Yes, this shouldn't be a thing. I've realized that this was a mistake, because he's stubborn for a lot of the movie, where he says no, next time it'll be better, next time we'll have better fences, we'll have better systems, and Ellie's like no, this will never work, and at the end of the movie he's like, you know what, no, I agree, this it can't be a thing. And in the second movie, he just wants the dinosaurs to live on an island on their own. Just let them have their own little island. Like, it's not like they can fly, except the pterodactyls. But even those can't fly that far theoretically, right? I mean, we don't know what their span, their migration patterns are.
Yeah, they're supposed to have some kind of like protein thing given to them, or else they die. But then I think it's established in the films and the book that they.
But you said it yourself. Life found a way, and by God, they're flourishing.
They're flourishing. I can't believe you found a quote from The Lost World.
That is the only Hammond quote I remember from Lost World. That's the only one.
Yeah. Anyway, I think there's a lot of good themes in the film, but
there's a lot of good themes. I agree. Yeah, themes.
Huh?
It's got a lot of good themes. I agree. It just doesn't really do anything with them.
It doesn't deliver. It's but I think, with the rise of pharmaceutical companies, I mean, you don't live in the States, but we advertise pharmaceuticals on TV. Like every other commercial is ask your doctor about blank blank. And if you go to a doctor, why would you have to ask them about a medication? Like, shouldn't they know what to prescribe you? And it's because companies make billions of dollars. So they need you to go be like, oh, ask your doctor about this one. Or if you like, how many medications are there for, plaque psoriasis? I could probably name you 10 just because they advertise on commercial. And
it's alien to me, but sure.
it's pretty gross. Yeah, it's pretty gross. It's a recent thing too. It used to be illegal to advertise pharmaceuticals on television, but once that law was lifted, they are not holding back.
Honestly, it may still be illegal here.
I think it is. I think it's unique to America, but we'll see. That will probably change.
Very possibly. Very possibly. The only cynical thing, because I mean, free healthcare is nice. Like I don't have too many complaints, but the only interesting thing I could tell you that's a little bit iffy, but I can't really blame him either way. Anyway, is my doctor apparently only works 4 days a week, and the reason why that is because if he works a fifth day, the amount he makes puts him into a higher tax bracket, so he actually makes less money. So he only works 4 days a week because otherwise he makes less money. Which, I mean, on the one hand, I'm like, well, you're a doctor, I feel like people need your services, but on the other hand, I would do the same thing probably because I'm not working an extra day to make less. I can't argue with that.
I guess I don't really see that as shady if he puts it up front like that.
Yeah, no, he's not lying about it. It's like,
so long as there's another doctor that is available to you.
Oh, sure, there is. Yeah.
Or like an RN.
But I mean, that's interesting. It's interesting that there's that incentive there that you're actually better off working less because otherwise you get hit more.
Well, I think that's a common thing for people who have, or nations that have free healthcare, though, is that your income taxes go up by a lot. I know that was the case in Canada. Sales tax, income tax goes up a lot because you're paying for the doctors.
Yeah, it's kind of worth it though. I mean,
oh, yeah, I agree. I think you can talk to anybody here who's on medication for life, and they'll say yes. I would much rather have free healthcare.
Basically, it's a way to kind of like have us all pay for medical insurance without us really noticing it, because it's like, okay, so we have to pay like say $3 more than you do for a cheeseburger. You know what? I'm happy with that if it means that when I have a heart attack, there's someone there to work on it without me worrying about it.
Because the cheeseburgers are eating.
Yeah, because the cheeseburgers I'm eating. It's just kind of genius when you think about it. That's why they tax junk food and like alcohol more, because.
And that's why we don't. They're cheap and subsidized by the government so that you get sick and you'll have to pay for health care. And
what a depressing conversation this has turned into.
Yeah, I think Crichton was onto something.
Oh, no, I mean, I can't deny that. That was the thing, actually, I was reading. I forgot it because I read this like, right after I watched it, so my details might be a little off here, but he apparently was working on this movie. He was working on the script himself, but the studio thought it diverted too much from his original book, so they hired someone else to write it instead.
Oh, really?
So I think what's interesting is that
I've never read the book. I've read a few Michael Crichton books, but I've never read this one.
I wonder if his original script, even though it technically was less faithful to the book in terms of events, I wonder if it actually delivered on its promise more because he understood what he was doing better. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know for sure. I have no idea, but I would maybe debate that's the case. Yeah, at the end of the movie, just because we're not really talked about that yet, is after he attacks and fails to get Ross, he stumbles to where his because I think it's where his wife and child are, like in the mausoleum. I think that's where he goes. Yeah,
it's a really beautiful shot too when he's like walking through, and the way the camera moves and the way he's framed among them. Like I really noticed it. Like, oh, this is a really pretty shot.
And his blood smears like all over the mausoleum, and then he just sort of throws himself into an empty grave. And this like family.
I think he attacks a priest or something too at one point.
Yeah, but I like all the family kind of notice them just because they come up for a funeral, and then it's just when they're up there that they notice them down there, and they're like, oh, and eventually the movie ends with a police helicopter shooting them down with a sniper.
Yeah, he's in the open grave and he has a gun with him.
Yeah,
but he's just like cradling. He's in like the fetal position. He can't do anything.
Yeah. Honestly, I got the impression that if they just left him, he probably would have just eventually like died from like insanity, because it felt like he was becoming less and less like coherent and mobile. He was just,
Yeah, maybe it was the blood loss.
Yeah.
In addition to the chip in his head and his wires being crossed wrong.
So I feel like there was maybe more to do with playing this whole thing as a tragedy, but again, I don't feel like it really dives into that enough either. I don't think it makes us care about anyone around him. I think actually having like a wife or someone who we see really loves him might have helped this movie. Like someone who's rooting for him and who's going to be affected by his death.
Yeah, I mean, he had the girlfriend, but she was kind of like, I don't know, she could have been anyone. She could have been a prostitute or something, and it wouldn't have really made a difference.
Yeah.
The ending's okay. It just feels a little
rushed.
That's what I'm looking for. No, nothing in this movie is rushed.
Okay, well, let me rephrase that. I think it's rushed. I think it's very slow paced, but the actual ideas are rushed in the sense that it just kind of does the thing in a couple of beats and that's it. Like
underwhelming.
It's underwhelming. The movie's underwhelming.
I think a lot of this movie is just very underwhelming.
I just wish it did so much more with its ideas, because honestly, there's probably enough.
I know they're there.
There's enough ideas in this to like fuel like 2 or 3 good movies, and instead it does none of them. It just is a whiff.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Unfortunately, I will say this though, and I'm not saying this is why it's been the least enjoyable one so far, but out of all these 70s movies we've done from the Criterion 70s month, this is the first one with no boobs or bush.
Hey.
and the only reason why
no wonder we don't like it as much.
And the only reason why that stuck out to me is because I seen the strip club, which I noticed was avoiding showing the boobs, and I thought, this is weird. This feels like the sort of movie that would bask in it.
And our leading lady like is very covered up all the time.
Oh yeah. She was having none of it. She was like, no.
Yes.
I'm not doing it on the day.
She is one classy lady who is quite covered.
Yes. So yeah, just an observation. I'm not really complaining. I really don't care if these movies have boobs in them.
No, you're right. That was a consistent pattern that has been broken.
Yes. Maybe the next one. We'll see what the next one's like.
No abdominal vaginas.
I suppose. Yeah. Well, there was actual bush in that movie too. But you're right. There was also the specific space, stomach vagina.
Yeah.
And we're not even going to tell you what movie that was for. You're just going to have to go back and find which one that was. If that's not a tease to check every movie we've done set in the 70s, I don't know what is. So that's basically the movie. That's The Terminal Man. It's sadly disappointing. I was hoping it was going to be something more than this. But we've got still a bunch of other 70s movies we're going to try and get to while they're available, and then beyond that as well. So there's more to come. But this was The Terminal Man. Tara, what would you give The Terminal Man, starring Tom Hanks and directed by Steven Spielberg? I'm kidding. The Terminal.
No, not The Terminal.
The Terminal Man. The Terminal Man. Yes.
I still do overall like the movie. Like, it is boring at times and underwhelming, I think, overall, but it's not a horrible watch. Like, I think it's still worth watching. So I was a little more down on it, and I think talking about the potential that's there is kind of made me go up a little bit. But
that's interesting, because I'd say it's done the opposite for me. It's soured me a little bit because it's more annoying that it's whiffed all these ideas.
I don't know. I like talking about the themes that are there that are just not quite explored as much as I want to. I think it's kind of similar to Final Countdown that way.
Yeah, okay. I can see that. Yeah. There's a lot of good little moments. Like, there's moments like, see the first time like he meets Dr. Ross, and he's standing over like behind like the little dressing curtain, and he's sort of like, leaning over it, and he's kind of smiling and cracking a little joke, and he's like, "Do I scare you?" And she's like, "No, not really." And he kind of smiles and walks around, and it's almost like
he's talking to a nurse, and he goes, "Do I scare the pants off of you?" She goes, "No," and he goes, "Pity."
But he's very charming, and it's this kind of thing where he's making sure she feels safe first before he starts cracking jokes, but then he kind of walks around, and it's almost it's a little moment that lets you know that he's concerned for other people's safety, and that's why he wants to be fixed, because he doesn't want people to be scared of him. And it's a little thing that makes you want to root for him a little bit. The problem is there's just it whiffs on it in other ways by like being really dull for a lot of the other stuff, but like so
and once he kind of turns and becomes just the guy who gets the seizures and can't
all
control
that goes
it
away.
Anymore.
All goes away.
It all goes away. Like he just becomes that. He's not the person that we're supposed to root for anymore. Or hope that will be saved anymore. So
there's little moments like that, and there's good direction, there's some good visuals at moments, but I think it whiffs on all the other potentials that it has.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna go with a 6.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. I will also go with a 6. I think it's not good, but there's enough good ideas to just about make it worth watching if you like these types of movies and you're interested in like seeing some odd little movies and like of times past. And well, because I think it's interesting that a couple of these movies now have been about computers, when, let's face it, computers in the 70s were a relatively new thing to most people. Like like I feel like this was a decade where they became known about enough that they could put them in movies and have stories about computers going out of control and things like that.
Right, it's a technology people don't understand, and therefore starting to fear it. Because
obviously like HAL 9000 has to be like one of the first AI like gone wrong stories, right?
Yeah,
has to be, because computers, as we understand them,
unless we think Count Alphaville, was that before?
Alphaville was before. That's true.
And that
don't even do an impression. Don't do an impression. I hate that sound. It's awful.
Yeah, that's a good movie. I liked it.
No, it wasn't.
I said it was good. I gave it a positive rating.
No. So no, super interesting. I think it's really interesting how movies with computers have developed as more and more people have like, as it's become more of a household object and it's become something that everyone uses at work. Like how different our attitudes towards computers have become, and
right.
Because
so we get to the 90s, like the net and Matrix.
Because that's when the internet became a thing, really, right? Yeah. For most people.
Yeah, global communication and instant information. Yeah.
Yeah, and now every movie in the future, it's all like glass tablets with like holograms popping out of it, and yeah, all that sort of stuff. But hey, so yeah, 6 out of 10 from both of us, I suppose. So it's not terrible. There's enough things in there to make it worth watching, but not at the expense. Like, watch all the classics first. Like, this is something to
definitely go with Death Race 2000 first.
Hey, that's more fun. I had more fun with that movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
So you want. I had more fun with it. But that is The Terminal Man. So you can let us know what you think of this one in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. You can get us on the Twitters at @mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel, everything we do, you can do it a couple of different ways. You can rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars. People will find us that way. You can share us out in the social medias.
You can check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/SmileFuzzTV. And if you like what we do and you want to support it and get extra content, you can donate as low as $1 per month, and you'll get bonus episodes of The Ace, the show you're watching right now, because you love it. And check out our bonus reviews of more B-movie quality films like Judge Dredd. What's the saga we've been doing?
The saga. Trancers is what you're looking for.
Trancers. I almost said Scanners. That's not right. Scanners always pops in my head, though.
That's technically sci-fi, though.
Do you think that would be a bonus episode?
I feel like the sequels would be bonus episodes, but the first one probably not.
Look forward to that in your future.
That'd be my guess. Yeah, it's got to go do all that stuff. Check out all the content we have. We have a horror movie podcast called Screams After Midnight that I do with Tim. We do movies every week just like this one. Just like this show, I mean, not like this movie. But you could check out that. Tara, why don't you promote another piece of content that we have?
Well, hopefully you guys are enjoying our Star Trek Picard series and enjoying our discussions on why it's a 10 out of 10. Perfect show, greatest show of all time.
It's worth mentioning for context here that we are recording this a few days before Picard actually starts. So Tower's making some assumptions here, some pretty big assumptions.
I don't think so. I don't think that's a stretch. That show I'm going to watch with my arms crossed and say, okay, prove to me you're not a 10. Which is why I'm reviewing it unbiased.
Oh yeah, totally. No.
Who knows? Maybe the show's over by the time this goes up. But yeah, go check out our review of Star Trek Picard.
People are going to think you're a paid shill, that you're paid to give it the most positive review ever.
If that were true, I would have a better camera.
Hey! Maybe a Patreon goal like later in the year. We'll get Tara a dedicated camera. So, anywho, yes, check out all the content and all that jazz. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Keep watching sci-fi movies, guys. A computer. That's salsa.
Cabinet.